If you're fascinated by biology, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into the glitches of evolution that made life as we know it possible. From the strange deal that created mitochondria to the mutation that gave us speech, milk, and even the ability to think, your entire existence is built on a handful of happy genetic accidents. These are 25 bizarre mutations that changed everything. But before we start, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate it. Let's get into it. 25. The symbiosis that changed everything. Billions of years ago, long before dinosaurs or forests or even oxygen in the air, life on Earth was nothing more than tiny blobs floating in the ocean. They were simple, each one living alone, dividing endlessly. But one day, one of those ancient cells did something no one had ever done before. It swallowed another cell whole. Now, normally that would have been the end of the story, but this time, they made a deal. The swallowed cell didn't get digested. Instead, it started producing energy for its host, tiny electrical power plants in a microscopic world. That swallowed cell would one day become what we now know as the mitochondrion, the powerhouse of every cell in your body. That one freak accident changed everything. It was evolution's version of two strangers forming a lifelong business partnership. Suddenly, cells had more energy, more power to grow, divide, and become complex. And that's the only reason you, me, and every living thing that breathes oxygen exists today. 24. The fusion that removed us from the great apes. We humans share 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, but somewhere in that remaining 2% lies a miracle of genetic fusion that forever separated us. See, chimps have 24 pairs of chromosomes, while we only have 23. How did that happen? At some point in our evolutionary past, two ape chromosomes lined up end to end and fused. Just like splicing two reels of film together, they formed a single, longer chromosome, our human chromosome 2. You can even still see the seam, a faint scar right in the middle of our DNA, where the telomeres and centromeres of two separate chromosomes merged. It didn't instantly turn us into humans, but that fusion became a biological signature of our lineage, a barcode no other species carries. It's proof that even one small rearrangement in the DNA deck can rewrite the entire story of life.
23. The gene that changed how we think. When scientists first compared human DNA to chimp DNA, they found something shocking, a region that looked like it had been hit with the evolutionary turbo button. It's called HAR1, and it's part of what makes our brains so unique. In just a few million years, HAR1 changed 18 times, an insane speed in evolutionary terms. And where does this mysterious region show up? In the developing cerebral cortex, the part of your brain that handles planning, memory, and imagination. That one stretch of genetic code helped sculpt the brain folds that make us thinkers and dreamers. The proteins it produces don't differ much from chimps, but the timing and pattern of when they activate do. It's like the same piano keys, but humans learned to play symphonies while apes stuck to the basics. Without HAR1, you wouldn't be watching this video, you wouldn't be writing poetry, and Einstein wouldn't have written his equations. 22. The mutation that made talking possible. Of all the gifts evolution gave us, the ability to speak, to share thoughts, to create language, is one of the most extraordinary, and it all comes down to a single gene called FOXP2. Most animals have a version of it, but in humans, two tiny changes flipped the switch. Those small tweaks gave us the ability to coordinate the complex dance between our lips, tongue, and vocal cords, the mechanics of speech. When FOXP2 mutates incorrectly, people can still understand words, but their mouths can't form them properly. It's the difference between thought and expression, a difference that shaped civilization itself. Scientists even tested this by giving mice the human version of FOXP2. And guess what? Their squeaks became more complex, like their little rodent conversations had leveled up. That gene turned grunts into grammar. It turned tribes into societies. It gave birth to storytelling, music, and everything we call culture. 21. The gene that gave us math, science, and art. Every artist, Every scientist, every engineer owes their imagination to a genetic glitch, a little copy-paste error called ARHGAP11B. It began as a duplication of another gene, but the new version came with a surprise: it supercharged brain development. During fetal growth, it told brain stem cells to multiply more than ever before, building layer upon layer of neurons.
20. The gene that gave us intelligence. Imagine if evolution installed a slow mode in our brains. And that's exactly what happened with a gene called srgap2c about 2.4 million years ago. Before this mutation, neurons in early primates developed fast and stopped once their connections were set. But when this strange copy of the srgap2 gene appeared, it did something remarkable. It slowed down brain wiring. That might sound bad, but it gave our developing brains more time to form new connections, more branches, more complexity. It was like switching from a quick sketch to a masterpiece. This extended learning window allowed our ancestors to absorb more from experience, pass down knowledge, and adapt to changing environments. Essentially, srgap2c gave us the ability to learn deeply, think abstractly, and teach each other, the foundations of intelligence itself. Without it, there'd be no civilization, no science, and no you sitting here thinking about this sentence. 19. You almost had a tail. Yep, once upon a time, you had a tail. Not just a little tailbone, but a real, moving tail like a monkey's. Our distant ancestors used it for balance and expression, and maybe even for holding onto branches. But then, something strange happened. A small chunk of DNA inserted itself into a gene called TBXT, which controls tail growth. The result? Tails disappeared. The irony? That mutation didn't just take away the tail. It may have caused a new set of problems. When scientists tested the same mutation in other animals, they noticed spinal defects and back pain. Sound familiar? Your chronic lower backache might just be the ghost of an evolutionary past. So next time your back hurts, remember, you're walking on the legacy of a tail you once had. 18. Your fur coat got deleted. If you've ever looked at a chimp and wondered why we're the naked ones, here's the answer. We lost our fur because of a nonsense mutation in a gene called KRTHAP1. Millions of years ago, this gene helped make keratin proteins, the stuff that gives animals their thick coats. But then, one tiny typo in our DNA stopped it mid-sentence. 17. Your hands and feet got a do-over. Take a moment and look at your hands. Every line, every curve, every thumb movement is the result of one of evolution's most elegant tweaks, a stretch of regulatory DNA called HACNS1. This piece of code doesn't create proteins. Instead, it controls how other genes behave, like a dimmer switch adjusting light levels. After humans split from chimpanzees, HACNS1 picked up 16 small but powerful mutations that completely reshaped how our limbs developed. It gave us strong thumbs for grip, toes for balance, and ankles built for walking upright. When scientists tested the human version of this gene in lab animals, they saw stronger growth in the regions that form the thumb and big toe, the exact areas that set us apart. Without this invisible hand guiding development, we might never have learned to craft tools, paint art, or type messages on a phone. HACNS1 gave us the grip that built civilization. 16. The East Asian adaptation. Evolution doesn't just shape species. It fine-tunes populations for the environments they live in. Around 35,000 years ago, in ancient China, a single mutation in the EDAR gene, known as V370A, quietly began to spread. The results were visible and powerful. Thicker, straighter hair, more sweat glands, and distinctively shaped front teeth. But this wasn't random. Each change gave a subtle survival edge. Thicker hair might have helped insulate in cold winters or protect from UV radiation. Extra sweat glands helped people stay cool in humid climates. And some scientists think the mutation may even have improved vitamin D transfer through breast milk, giving infants stronger bones and immunity. This single gene didn't just change appearance, it shaped identity.
It's the reason millions today share those distinct East Asian features. Proof that evolution works with precision, not paintbrushes. 15. A genetic shortcut to vitamin D. Picture Ice Age Europe. Cold, gray skies, and months with barely any sunlight. In that world, survival wasn't just about warmth or food. It was about light and the ability to capture it. Enter a mutation in the SLC24A5 gene, known as ALA111THR. One tiny change, one letter swap in DNA, and suddenly, skin began producing less melanin, the pigment that gives color and protects against UV. That lighter tone let more sunlight in, allowing the body to produce more vitamin D in regions where the sun was weak and rare. For early Europeans, that meant stronger bones, healthier pregnancies, and better immune systems. Sure, the trade-off was higher risk of sunburn and skin cancer in bright environments, but in the freezing north, lighter skin wasn't vanity. It was a survival code written in DNA. So next time you see the variety of human skin tones across the world, remember, it's evolution's map of sunlight, written right on our skin.
14. Breathing easy at 13,000 feet. Imagine living high in the Himalayas, where oxygen levels are half of what they are at sea level. For most people, that's dizzying, even deadly, but for the Tibetans, it's home. Their secret lies in a powerful genetic tweak, a variant in the EPAS1 gene, often called the super athlete gene. This tiny change helps control how the body reacts to thin air. Normally, when oxygen drops, our bodies pump out extra red blood cells to compensate. But too many cells make the blood thick and sluggish, a recipe for strokes or heart failure. Tibetans? They don't have that problem. Their version of EPAS1 keeps blood thinner, even in low oxygen, allowing them to live, work, and even run at altitudes that would knock the rest of us flat. Here's the wild twist. This gene didn't come from modern humans at all. It's inherited from Denisovans, an extinct cousin species. So the next time a Tibetan trekker passes you effortlessly at 15,000 feet, know they're carrying a gift from ancient DNA. 13. The mutation that cuts heart disease in half. Some people are born with a secret weapon, a genetic shield that protects their hearts for life. The key? A rare variation in the PCSK9 gene. Normally, this gene tells the liver to destroy the receptors that clean up bad cholesterol, LDL, from your blood. But when a loss of function mutation occurs, those receptors don't go away. They stick around and keep vacuuming cholesterol non-stop. The result? Cholesterol levels drop dramatically, sometimes by 15 to 20%, and heart disease risk plummets by nearly half. It's like having a natural built-in statin. Once scientists discovered it, they created a new class of heart drugs modeled on this very mutation. So yes, evolution literally invented heart medicine before we did. 12. Turning dairy into dinner. You might take milk for granted, but for most of human history, adults couldn't drink it without getting sick. That's because the enzyme that digests milk sugar, lactase, usually shuts off after infancy. But then, something incredible happened. In ancient herding societies, a mutation in the LCT gene flipped a biological switch, keeping lactase production on for life. 11. The mutation that buys you extra time. What if your genes quietly gave you more years? Not by making you immortal, but by keeping your arteries young. That's the story of the CETP gene, and the lucky few who carry its life-extending mutation. CETP manages how cholesterol particles move around your bloodstream. The special version of this gene makes those particles larger and smoother, so they're less likely to wedge into artery walls. It's like widening the highways of your bloodstream. Fewer traffic jams, fewer blockages, and less risk of heart attacks or strokes. Studies show people with this mutation live longer, often with sharper minds and healthier hearts. In fact, centenarians in Japan are 3 times more likely to carry it. This gene doesn't promise eternal youth, but it gives evolution's best gift: more time to love, learn, and leave your mark on the world. 10. From teosinte to tortillas: how a grass became food. Imagine ancient humans in Mesoamerica, standing in fields of wild grass called teosinte, small, hard kernels encased in stone-like shells. It didn't look, taste, or act anything like the golden corn we know today. Then came a genetic miracle.
A random mutation in the TGA1 gene changed how the plant built those tough casings. Suddenly, the kernels were soft, exposed, and edible. With that one genetic rewrite, teosinte transformed into maize, a plant humans could finally cook, grind, and replant with ease. This mutation didn't just feed a family, it fed civilizations. The Mayans, Aztecs, and countless farming societies flourished on the back of this one genetic event. Entire cultures, mythologies, and economies grew from the soil that now produced corn. And to this day, billions of bushels of maize are harvested every year. Proof that a small tweak in DNA can quite literally reshape the world's dinner plate. 9. The dawn of agriculture, when plants chose to stay put. For early humans, gathering grains was a gamble. Wild wheat and rice had a frustrating habit. Once they ripened, they'd explode, scattering seeds everywhere before anyone could collect them. Then nature slipped. A genetic broken shatter mutation appeared. The seeds stayed attached to the stalks. Humans noticed. Instead of chasing food, they could harvest, store, and replant it. Year after year, they chose the plants that didn't drop their seeds, slowly domesticating entire species without even realizing it. These tiny mutations in crop DNA marked the beginning of agriculture, the single biggest turning point in human history. Cities, trade, writing, and civilization itself only followed because a few genes decided to stop scattering in the wind.
8. The Duffy negative mutation, outsmarting malaria.
In parts of West and Central Africa, evolution pulled off a brilliant act of defense. A single mutation that shut down an entire species of malaria parasite. Here's how. Malaria parasites need a key, a protein on red blood cells called the Duffy receptor, to invade. But in millions of people, a mutation in the DARC, Duffy antigen receptor gene, simply deleted the lock. No receptor, no infection. Plasmodium vivax, one of the deadliest malaria strains, couldn't get in. This wasn't just survival, it was a genetic revolution. In some African populations today, over 95% are Duffy negative, immune to that form of malaria. It's one of the most dramatic examples of evolution fighting back, where human DNA literally slammed the door on a parasite that had plagued the planet for millennia. 7. The sickle cell trade-off, a deadly gift that saves lives. Not every mutation makes life easier. Some are double-edged. The sickle cell mutation is one of the most famous. It all starts with a single letter change in the beta-globin gene, which shapes hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in red blood cells. With one copy of the gene, red blood cells twist into sickle shapes under low oxygen. That sounds bad, and it can be, but there's a catch. If you have just one copy, not two, those warped cells are lethal to malaria parasites. They can't latch on, can't reproduce, and die off. So while two copies cause sickle cell disease, one copy means malaria resistance. And in malaria-heavy regions, that advantage is massive. It's natural selection's cruel math. One mutation that's both a shield and a curse, saving millions while costing countless others. 6. 1 in 5 Europeans who can't catch the stomach flu. If you've ever watched a family wiped out by the stomach flu while you walked away fine, you might have your DNA to thank. About 20% of Europeans carry a mutation in the FUT2 gene, nicknamed the non-secretor variant. Normally, this gene places blood group markers, A, B, or O antigens, in your saliva and gut lining. And that's exactly what noroviruses latch onto when infecting you. But if you're a non-secretor, those markers never appear. To the virus, your gut looks like a locked door. Smooth, uninviting, impossible to grab. The result? You're basically immune to most strains of norovirus, the bug responsible for half of all food poisoning outbreaks. It's one of evolution's quieter victories, a mutation that doesn't make you stronger or faster, but simply lets you walk away from the bathroom battle unscathed.
5. Shaping the world's blood supply. The birth of A, B, and O. Your blood type, A, B, AB, or O, might feel like a random detail on your medical form, but it's the product of millions of years of survival battles. It all traces back to a single gene called ABO, which determines which markers sit on the surface of your red blood cells. Originally, ancient humans all carried type A blood. Then, around 3.5 million years ago, a mutation flipped one base pair, giving rise to type B. Finally, another major mutation deleted those markers altogether, creating type O blood. And that blank version turned out to be life-changing. Type O blood resists certain infections, including severe malaria, because parasites struggle to cling to those smooth red cells. That's why O is dominant in Africa and South America, where malaria once ravaged entire regions. Meanwhile, type A became common in Europe, B in Asia, and AB, the rarest, survived as a hybrid. Today, blood types still save lives in hospitals every day, but they also tell the hidden story of ancient battles between humans and pathogens, etched in our veins forever. 4. The Bajau spleens, humanity's real-life Aquaman mutation. Meet the Bajau, the sea nomads of Indonesia, people who've lived almost entirely on water for over 1,000 years. They spend up to 13 minutes underwater on a single breath, diving for fish and shells without modern gear. How do they do it? Scientists discovered their secret in 2018, a genetic adaptation in a gene called PDE10A, which affects spleen size. The spleen acts like an internal oxygen tank. It stores oxygen-rich red blood cells and releases them when you dive. The Bajau's spleens are 50% larger than those of their neighbors, giving them a natural edge under the sea. Even more amazing, this isn't just training, it's evolution. Genetic sequencing confirmed that this adaptation spread through generations of diving, showing how human DNA can evolve in just a few centuries when survival depends on it. They're living proof that our species never stopped adapting. We just traded gills for genes.
3. The carb upgrade. How we learned to eat our way to civilization. Once humans started farming, carbohydrates became life's new fuel. But not everyone's body could handle the starch-heavy diet of rice, wheat, and roots, at least not until a specific gene stepped up. Enter AMY1, the gene that produces salivary amylase, an enzyme that breaks starch into sugar right in your mouth. People from farming communities ended up with more copies of this gene, meaning they could extract more energy from grains and tubers. Hunter-gatherers, on the other hand, who relied on meat and plants, usually carried fewer copies. This small variation created a metabolic advantage, better energy absorption, improved blood sugar regulation, higher survival during famine. It was natural selection at the dinner table. Whoever digested starch more efficiently had a better shot at surviving, reproducing, and passing that trait on. In other words, civilization's rise, from bread to noodles to beer, was written in the language of extra AMY1 genes.
2. The Neanderthal upgrade, ancient DNA that made us tougher. Roughly 50,000 years ago, humans left Africa and met the Neanderthals, and we didn't just exchange looks across the firelight, we exchanged genes. Modern humans carry about 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA, and it's not just random. Some of their genes turned out to be critical survival upgrades. One powerful set, TLR1, TLR6, and TLR10, boosted our immune response, acting like ancient burglar alarms for the body. They helped early humans detect bacteria and viruses they'd never encountered before in Europe and Asia. It wasn't a perfect trade-off. These hyper-alert immune genes also raised sensitivity, meaning modern allergies and autoimmune issues may trace back to that prehistoric hookup. Still, for early humans walking into strange lands full of new diseases, Neanderthal DNA was a lifesaver, a biological shield passed down from a long-lost cousin. 1. Life's first great genetic gamble, the mutation that made everything possible. Before mitochondria,
before humans, before even oxygen in the sky. There was one moment that rewrote life on Earth. Around 2.4 billion years ago, tiny blue-green microbes called cyanobacteria stumbled upon the greatest evolutionary hack of all time: oxygenic photosynthesis. A mutation in their reaction center genes rewired how they used sunlight, letting them split water molecules for energy and release oxygen as a byproduct. That one genetic leap, creating what we now call photosystem 2, transformed the planet. Oceans rusted, the air filled with oxygen, and countless species suffocated in what scientists call the Great Oxidation Event. But from that chaos rose something new: life that could breathe. It was the birth of aerobic respiration, the same process powering your heartbeat, your thoughts, and this very moment.
Without that ancient DNA error, the world would still belong to slime. Instead, it gave rise to mitochondria, animals, and eventually you reading this sentence. Every mutation on this list, from tails lost to spleens supersized, tells one story: life never stops experimenting. Some mutations doomed species, others built civilizations, but every one of them, big or small, shaped the living world as we know it. So next time you breathe, eat, or dream, remember, you're not just alive. You're the result of 4 billion years of lucky DNA mistakes. Which mutation amazed you the most? The loss of our tails, the rise of corn, or the Bauhaus deep-sea superpower? Drop your answer below. And if you loved learning how evolution literally rewrote our story, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss our next deep dive into science's strangest secrets. Would you like me to now create a YouTube-style title and description for this full 25 mutations that changed life video, optimized for engagement and SEO?